This is Courtney with Texas Teacher Today. If you want to learn how to pass the LOTE, you are in the right spot. So it has a high failure rate. It's a tough exam with a very high level of Spanish expected and a lot of knowledge of pedagogy, second language acquisition, instruction, and assessment. But with the right preparation, you can pass it. So let's start off with some information first, and then we'll look at some sample questions. So first, this is information by TEA, and this is first-time test taker passing rate. So we can see that in the most recent year, 2024 to 2025, for LOTE Spanish, the passing rate was 54%. So 46% of people didn't pass the test the first time they take it. And most of the people taking this test, I believe, speak Spanish as a first language. So it's very important that you improve your Spanish and learn the pedagogy in order to have a chance of passing this exam. So let's talk about what's actually on the exam. This is the Texas NESINC manual, the free manual on the test, and you can see over a third of the test is on instruction and assessment. This part is in English. It includes 45 multiple choice questions on second language acquisition theories, models, experts, the 5 Cs, the ACTFL guidelines, things like that. It includes a lesson plan that you write in English and an essay you write in English. So over a third of the test is in English. And that's why people from Spain, Puerto Rico, Mexico take this test and struggle with it because they might nail the Spanish parts, but they might struggle with the pedagogy. And same thing goes for heritage and second language learners too, that maybe do well in Spanish and don't do well in pedagogy. Usually, second language learners and heritage speakers can stand to improve their Spanish some, so they need to work on all domains. You can see cultural understanding is 8%. I can say most people get about 9 or 10 questions out of 12 right on that without a lot of studying. But listening and reading are 16.7%. And most of the heritage speakers, that's people that grew up here in Texas but speak Spanish at home, are getting about 18 out of 25 right. That's less than 80%. So they do need to work on listening and reading, even though they often think they don't. The score report shows otherwise. And then for written expression and oral expression, 12% for each of those. Most people are getting 12 out of 18, which is only 67%. So they also need to work on that. So you really need to work on all domains to have a good chance of passing this test. And that's what we do in my course in tutoring. We work on everything. But I can say that if you are from Mexico, Spain, Puerto Rico, Venezuela, any Spanish speaking country, and you went to school there, your Spanish is probably more formal and academic than people that grew up in Texas, and you might know accent marks better and have that advantage, but you still have to prepare for the pedagogy. So that's why I want to talk about pedagogy today, because everybody needs to work on that. But most people also could stand to work on their Spanish. Even people from Spanish-speaking countries sometimes need to work on improving things like focusing on the objective. But let's get started talking about some difficult pedagogy questions. So I have a difficult pedagogy test that I made because some people have told me I'm really struggling with these hard pedagogy questions. So I made a full-length test, and we'll go over about 15 of them right now and show you some examples of what you can expect. So this one says a Spanish student struggles with using syntax correctly, as well as conjugating verbs and using the right prepositions. The teacher wants to help him improve. What should she plan activities on to help him improve in these areas? So these are the competences that are part of part of communicative competence. So A is sociolinguistic competence, B grammatical competence, C strategic competence, and D discourse competence. Well, they're talking about syntax. That's word order, sentence structure, conjugating, using prepositions. So that's grammar, grammatical competence. Number 2, a Spanish teacher recently attended a workshop covering Lev Vygotsky's ideas. Which of the following would she most likely plan if she wants to incorporate what she learned? Well, Lev Vygotsky is known for the interactionist theory, collaborative learning, and the zone of proximal development. All right. So he's really big on the social aspect of learning. So let's see which one is most social. A, she should plan activities that allow students to practice speaking in safe situations, use lots of comprehensible input, as well as be sure to plan instruction following the natural order. B, she should plan activities that would allow her to use integrated performance assessments and use authentic texts. C, she should plan a lot of activities with social learning and collaboration. Well, remember I said he's big on the social aspect. And D, she should plan interdisciplinary and thematic units. So that's the best one. The other ones are different experts, or this one's not really an expert. This is just a good pedagogy practice. But this is the only one aligned to the question. A Spanish 4 student can use all verb tenses, but he often hesitates and worries a lot about making mistakes. He also self-corrects a lot. The Spanish teacher asks him to be more willing to take risks and worry less about perfection. Which of the following language acquisition experts has a hypothesis that would help the teacher know how to help him? Okay, so Noam Chomsky, Delheim, Stephen Krashen, Larry Selinker. So this is talking about the monitor hypothesis where you're worried about perfection, and that is Stephen Krashen. So Stephen Krashen has 6 hypotheses that you have to know, and I teach you all about those in my course in tutoring. Number 4, a Spanish student is learning to conjugate in the preterite tense and says yo conducí and yo tení. She also says la agua limpia and el mano. Which of the following should the teacher do? So these kind of mistakes here are called overgeneralizing. That's when you learn a rule and you apply it all the time. So this person learned to drop the ending and add the I with the accent to past tense verbs, preterite tense. And they learned whenever a word is feminine, you say la. And when it's masculine, and when it ends in an O, well, when it's feminine, you do say la. But what I mean is when it ends in an A, you say la. When it ends in an O, you say L. But there are exceptions. So they're applying this rule all the time. That's called overgeneralizing. It's part of inner language. So let's see. Should she ignore because it's a normal part of their inner language? We should never ignore something. B, she should provide gentle direct correction. Well, we don't want to provide direct correction. C, she should provide indirect correction to help correct these features of inner language. Yes. And scaffolding is always good, but that's not going to address this in particular. So that's not as specific. Next, we have number 5. A Spanish student makes the following mistakes. La planeta instead of el planeta. Yo sabo instead of yo sé. What types of mistakes is she making? Well, we just talked about overgeneralizing, and these are more examples of overgeneralizing. So planeta comes from a Greek root, and instead of saying la, we say el. So that's an exception. And then the verb saber is an irregular verb. We don't say yo sabo, we say yo sé. So those are overgeneralizing. So that's the correct answer for that. It's not related to L1, it's not language interference, and it's not only misconjugating because this is not conjugating. A Spanish teacher teaches Spanish 3 times per week at an elementary school. The students acquire a low level of intermediate proficiency, and she plans instruction that follows a natural order. What type of program is this? So this sounds like they're going to get some level of proficiency, and it's sequential language instruction, which is indicative of a FLES program, not immersion, flex, or bilingual. So if it has sequential language instruction and they're expected to gain proficiency, it's a FLES program. An elementary school implements a new program. They introduce students to basic French and Spanish vocabulary, focusing on games, greetings, and cultural activities. They meet once per week. What type of program is this? So this sounds like it's just for exposure, just to get them used to some basic vocabulary, but they're not going to gain proficiency. So this one is the FLEX program, not immersion, bilingual, or FLES. A Spanish teacher uses a lot of comprehensible input using language chunks. Which 2 acquisition experts is she following? Well, comprehensible input is Stephen Krashen. Language chunks is Michael Lewis. So the correct answer would be Krashen and Lewis, not Krashen and Vygotsky. We learned about him with social acquisition, not Vygotsky because that's social, and not Himes, that's communicative competence. A Spanish teacher plans units where she collaborates with the math, science, and social studies teachers. She incorporates what they are learning in those subjects into her Spanish lessons. What is she doing? Select all that apply. I can tell you they do this quite a bit on the LOTE where it says select all that apply, and a lot of people miss these. They just select one correct answer, but it says specifically select all that apply. So there's going to be at least 2 answers right. Using content-based instructional methods. That's when you're teaching other subjects in Spanish, which is what she's doing. This is an interdisciplinary unit where she's connecting subjects. It's not I+1, which is a Stephen Krashen theory I explain in my course in tutoring, and it's not scaffolding. Number 10, a Spanish teacher decides to start teaching conjugation of verbs using the future tense. Which of the following is true? Well, you never start teaching conjugation with the future tense. You always start with the present tense. If you start with any other tense, you're violating what's called the natural order. So she's not doing what's recommended, even though future tense is easy to conjugate. It's not recommended. Um, if she uses I+1 in scaffolding, it's still not going to work because it's breaking the natural order. It's not recommended with comprehensible input. It's breaking the natural order hypothesis. Which of the following best explains the difference between Noam Chomsky and Dalheim? So Noam Chomsky focuses on linguistics. Dalheim focuses on all aspects of communication. So A is correct. Dalheim's does not focus on linguistics, so that's not right. Dalheim's does focus on communicative competence, but Noam Chomsky does not focus on social interaction. They both focus on linguistics, no. So A is correct. If you need help with all these theories and experts, I know it can be overwhelming, but in my course in tutoring, I explain all of them in a very easy to understand way, and then you get a lot of practice like this to check your understanding. Which of the following is an example of language interference? That's where your knowledge of L1 gets in the way of learning L2. Using knowledge of L1 to figure out the meaning of cognates. Now that's positive language transfer. When knowledge of L1 facilitates learning of L2, that's positive language transfer. When a false cognate causes a misunderstanding of a word, that one is language interference. When a student overgeneralizes a new word, that's a different kind of error. A Spanish teacher attends a conference about Michael Lewis's ideas. Afterwards, she plans lessons taking into account what she learned. Which of the following reflects what she learned? So Michael Lewis is known for language chunks. So let's look for the one about language chunks. It would be C, not comprehensible input, not I+1 in scaffolding, and not collaborative learning. Those are different experts that you learn about in my course in tutoring. So language chunks is Michael Lewis. A Spanish 2 student is improving in proficiency, but he still makes mistakes related to L1 and due to overgeneralizing. What does this indicate? So when they make those kind of mistakes related to L1 and overgeneralizing, that's indicative of interlanguage. So it's not saying he's novice. It is saying his development of interlanguage. That's indicative of that. It's not that the teacher should do more scaffolding, even though that's always good, and definitely not direct correction. A Spanish teacher takes into account readiness levels, proficiency levels, interests, and backgrounds when planning lessons. What is she doing? Using scaffolding, using I+1, using differentiated instruction, using realia. So when you're taking into account all of those things, you're doing what's called differentiated instruction. You're meeting the needs of every learner in the classroom. So if you found this helpful and you want more practice and you want to learn about all these theories and the 5 C's and the ACTFL guidelines, I encourage you to join my course in tutoring. We meet on Wednesdays for an hour. We practice all domains and we'll help you get better. Help you get better at your Spanish and your pedagogy. And if you're interested or if you just want more information, you can call or text me at 361-846-0741. And I'm sure you will learn so much and be able to pass your LOTE with the right preparation. So even with the high failure rate, you can do it. So please give me a call or send me a text. Don't forget to like and subscribe and keep watching, and best of luck in your educator certification journey. Thank you.